fundamental privileges of just being a mother, not being allowed to welcome her children home from boarding school, and her husband being taken away from her at a very young age, 25. Today, we honor this woman who was everything to us and more. And before I ask Bishop Mpumlwana to come and officiate the ceremony, allow me to officially welcome you and to remind all of us that blessed are we to have walked this earth in her lifetime.
This is a call to a silent self-offering. Holy God, this congregation now conditions itself before you for a couple of hours of grateful remembrance of the life of your child and servant, Winnie Mandela, a beloved daughter of the Madikizela family. Accept our offering of silence and use it as a halo that will help us to see you in the life of this woman, who now becomes our ancestor of active citizenship. In silence, we offer her memory to your archive of love and offer ourselves to her lifelong cause of citizen agency for the public good. Let us now observe a moment's silence, offering of ourselves in Winnie's honor. Thank you. In this very brief reflection, not much can be said but to suggest that the woman we have come to appreciate here today can be described as an ancestor of active citizenship. For if we are to commit ourselves in her memory to anything at all, it must be to use our space to mobilize for active citizenship, and to let no system or deference thereto cow our resolve to stand up for the dignity of the least of our society, whatever the cost. Winnie mobilized for active citizenship in Soweto in spite of her banning orders that sought to consign her to a twilight existence. Her mothering the youth of the 1976 uprising was as in vintage Pondoland revolt milieu, of which more can be said. Her banishment and exile to Brantford was the official testimony of her organizational strength for active citizenship. And in characteristic form, she turned Brantford into a new frontier of organization and platform for active citizenship, with hundreds recruited for life commitment for the liberation struggle. Yet, we cannot honor Winnie without recognizing the impact of her home background. She grew up in the rural Mbongweni village of Bizana in the Alfred Nzo district in Mambondweni. She was a hardworking child, working the fields, cultivating the crops, herding cattle, milking cows, and becoming adept at stick fighting and defending herself. Her family tells of how she would beat up the boys that sought to bully her at Mfundisweni Secondary School. Born into a large family of a school principal, Ukalimbizeni, who taught more than what colonial education intended, and who crowded their home with many kids who came to attend their school. Winnie was socialized for a gregarious life of nationalistic consciousness. This must be what attracted her to the dapper activist Rolihlahla Mandela. This was to mark her way of life in Soweto to her last day. As we celebrate Mangwijana here today, we do well to acknowledge that rural heritage, which she continued to cherish and from which she was to draw her strength and strategy. This heritage inspired her adaptive capacity, which was to come through in how she responded to the life imprisonment of her husband. As she said, "My people shall never lose hope. In fact, we expect that the work will go on." Not a hint of self-pity at the prospect of the life ahead of her. This emerging adaptive leader was to become the magnet for those who were prepared to give of themselves for the struggle for justice and for the preservation of the dignity of the people against apartheid and its degrading humiliation. Her father's political education and her mother's accommodation and nurturing of children from all over who came to their school prepared her. No, it conditioned her to be the pioneer social worker who would draw many to her orbit of influence for a better South Africa. Secondly, the political and organizational culture of a Pondoland home community was to become the guiding light of her organizational strategy. She would be incisively analytical of her situation, act courageously and decisively to defend and expand her base, turning adversity into her strategic thrust. Straitjacketed as she was for decades by banning orders, prison, solitary confinement, torture, round-the-clock surveillance, and put through the meal of insults and abuse, and yes, with her dignity and good name being undermined by a complex diversity from without and from within her immediate environs. The foundation of her roots in Pondoland prevailed, and she remained focused on mobilizing for active citizenship for public good, for the public good of the least, leaving nothing to chance. If we're to remember her this week, we have to each commit to take up our citizenship responsibility without reservation. The unprotected of our society need it of us all. The accountability of government in the constitutional state requires it. For an accountable government is the product of an active citizenry. In Winnie Madikizela Mandela, we had a mother of active citizenship. In her regrettable death, we have gained an ancestor of active citizenship. And with her spirit of courage and fortitude, we shall remain the defenders of the socially and economically deprived for a future she would have lived for.
Indeed, that's the memorial service held in tribute and honor of the
For those of you who don't know, that is a traditional Xhosa lullaby, often sung to us by our mothers, putting us to bed when they were going out to fulfill their purpose. Tula tula baba, tula sana, hush my child. Tula, umama uzabuya ekuseni. Hush, because umama will come back in the morning. Can we please put our hands together for the incredible Wouter, the incredible Soweto Gospel Choir, both Grammy Award-winning musicians. Music is a very important part of our narrative as South Africans. We sing when we mourn, we sing when we celebrate, we sing when we have hope, and we sing when we have fear. Melodies are every part of us, and it reminds me, as a 10-year-old child standing at Wembley Stadium, watching the entire world come together to say, free South Africa, free Utata or Nelson Mandela. She was worthy of statesmanship, and she fell in love with a statesman, which further expanded her purpose here on earth, which is to make sure that Ntombi Yasebizana becomes a symbol of hope on a global scale. I'd like to welcome member of the board of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Unikiwe Bikicha, to send a message from the foundation itself.
Inkosi Unati, to the family of Umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, Honorable Minister Jeff Radebe, Mama Graça Machel, fellow trustee of the Nelson Mandela Foundation Ndate Tokyo Sekhwale, Bishop Mbomala, a stalwart of our movement, George Bizos, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Molweni, good morning. Today, we as the trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation join millions around the country and the world to honor and pay tribute to an extraordinary woman, a revolutionary leader of our people and mother of the nation, Umama uNomzamo Winifred Madikizela Mandela. Sithe nathi ke siyile foundation eyaqalwa ngutata uNelson Mandela, masizogcwala emswaneni. Superlatives and adjectives sometimes appear too whimsical and fall short of capturing the depth of Mama's courage and immense sacrifice in the struggle for South Africa's liberation. Umama Winnie has been described variously as a lioness, a warrior, fierce. In isiXhosa, we would encapsulate this to mean ebeligorha. As various terrors and indignities were visited upon Umama over many years by the apartheid government and its sinister security forces, she remained fearless, defiant, and stoic, displaying a steadfast commitment to activism against the many ills which continue to stalk our country today, such as racism, inequality, and poverty. As the chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Professor Njabulo Ndebele wrote last week when the news of Mama's passing reached us, he said, and I quote, "All South Africans are indebted to Mama Winnie, whether they acknowledge it or not. From the witness of her life, we knew we could stand tall. We knew also we could falter and stumble. Either condition was an affirmation of life. Her cry was our cry." Close quote. While we celebrated the fruits of democracy and freedom, she continued to carry the burden of those forgotten and left behind by the winds of change. She once told me that she found Parliament boring. She didn't believe that is how she could truly make an impact in people's lives. She wanted to be with the people where she was needed most. And when people cried out to her, she gave everything of herself. As the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mama's relentless activism and courage represent her most significant and lasting legacy. Her unshakable belief in speaking truth to power on matters of principle, even in the face of vilification and being ostracized, serves as a guide as we face old and new struggles in South Africa. Nelson Mandela did not make Winnie Mandela. But their lives, of course, remain inextricably linked. She traveled a very long road together with our founder, Nelson Mandela. That is why, as we mourn Mama's death and celebrate her life, we are encouraged by the example of her courage and commitment to redouble our own efforts as the foundation in striving towards the South Africa she envisioned and she so valiantly fought for. As Unati has said, today marks 100 days before we mark the centenary of Nelson Mandela. We therefore call on all of us to dedicate the next 100 days and beyond to honoring both legacies by serving the vulnerable in our society. To Mama's family, we cannot dare to imagine your pain and anguish. But know that you are in our thoughts. She was a mother whose warmth and love radiated to the nation as a whole. My own experience with her is testament to that. As a young journalist, I was fortunate enough to meet and interview Umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela some 15 years ago. I was heavily pregnant at the time, and she was very surprised to learn that the young woman now waddling or ambling towards the door of her house was the same person who had been hounding her for months for an interview. Mama rushed out of her house and quickly bundled me into her home and proceeded to fuss over me, plying me with cookies, cool drink, and umbona. We sat in her garden that afternoon, basking in the early autumn sun as we spoke frankly and openly about life, love, politics. The warmth and generosity she showed me that day, a stranger, remains forever etched in my mind. We will all miss her. Sithi ke ngalo akuhlanga lengahlanga. Lala ngoxolo mangutyana. Hamba kakuhle mama uNomzamo. I thank you.
Uthethile Nikiwe, siyabulela kakhulu. Njengoba sitsho namhlanje, we're here to mourn the death of Umama, but more importantly, to celebrate her legacy, to celebrate her life, to celebrate her energy, to celebrate her soul, ultimately, the sacrificial soul. As South Africans, we are great storytellers, and we travel the world telling these magnificent stories. One of our greatest exports is about to come onto stage to allow us to continue the legacy of Umama. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Anant Singh.
Thank you. Esteemed guests, Ndleka Mandela and the Mandela family members, Margaretha, and especially George Bezos, because he was the one that in 1958, shortly after Winnie was married, defended her for an assaulting a policeman. And that journey began with Winnie and Madiba all that time ago. She was only 25 years old. Thank you. She was a giant amongst women and men. And I think that when you read and watch the news and everybody, you know, they talk about her journey. And she was such a formidable character. And I'm so proud that she was a friend. My journey with her began almost 35 years ago when I met her through our mutual friend Fatima Mir. And that whole time of a generation of amazing South African women who were holding the torch and also being single parents, bringing up their children, was difficult enough. Not that they had, and thereafter they had to endure the enormous hardships of the apartheid regime. Fatima was doing a book on Mama Winnie and asked me to help with some of the design and the publishing. And the more I read and the more I learned, the more inspired I was to use that medium of film that I know to speak out against apartheid. I was in awe of her enormous courage and the injustices that she had to endure. Over the years, several meetings ensued where I got to meet her, and as I was beginning my journey with making a film of Long Walk to Freedom, I started talking to her, and the ability to tell that story and what it became was largely as a function of the love story between Madiba and Winnie. She was always available and met with the actors, met with the director, the writers, and she had this remarkable memory of detail. And that I was very fortunate about, because I could call her and say, you know, you were in solitary. We talk about Tina Swallenpool, who was this mean security police official who did the worst to her, trying to break her down. And as we see, we go ahead 100 days today to Madiba's birthday. Imagine spending 5 times that in solitary. Most of us would break down quite easily, but she didn't. She said to me that it was that the more they threw at her, the more she had to try and succeed and be coming out of there and being the fighter that she was. So I got to making the film. When we started production, I think she was slightly apprehensive about how I was going to tell the story. I gave her the assurance that I'm going to be factually accurate, and we went through production, and then came the time to actually show her the film. It was probably the most terrifying time for me in my life, because I'm taking someone who's alive, whose life I'm putting into film, and having her watch it, and what if she hated it, and it's a psychological minefield. Anyway, it was just the two of us. We sat in a private movie theater and next to each other, and we watched the movie. And I'm nervous. She floated into it, and it was such a remarkable and one of the most memorable moments, experiences of my life, because I could see, her fidgeting and, turning, and watching those images, holding my hand at times. And at the end of the movie, she turned to me and gave me a kiss and said, "I love it, don't change anything." And we talked about the actress, because Naomi Harris was playing her, and she said no one could do that as well as she did. She has to be African. She was actually born in England. And when they met, they became immediate friends because they did a photo shoot together, which was quite amazing. And going on from there, I did the song for the film is called Ordinary Love. And Bono and U2 did the song. So Bono records 2 songs, he sends them to me. I love them, and he calls me back 2 weeks later and says, no, I don't think this is fitting. This love story has to come out more. So we talked for a while, and then it came upon me, why don't I send him the letters between Madiba and Winnie, both their letters, during their prison time, and that was the catalyst for Ordinary Love that became the award-winning song that in the film. About a few months ago, I got to visit with her, and I took her an iPad with about 20 hours of material. So it was interviews, it was photographs going back, from the Kunu days, and I showed it to her, I put it on, I was with my son, and she started watching, and, and she says, she remembered details in those in the images going back, and it was such a wonderful experience for me and my son that we were reliving through her in that immediate time. So I think I was very happy that that happened. I want to send our love, our prayers, and our support to Zenani and Zinzi, my sisters, who have been close friends for years. This is a very difficult time for them. I want to salute the strength of their mother in bringing them up, and in such difficult circumstances. That guy Swanepoel would make it his duty to take her away late at night when they were sleeping. He'd wake them up, and it was so devastating for the children. So this tribute that I've put together, Cello called me last week, I think on Thursday, and said, why don't we do a video? And fortunately, it was that material that I presented to her that I had as a resource. And this is my tribute to her, and I hope you feel that it does justice to her amazing legacy. We salute her, we love her, and always will, and I hope she inspires the young people of today and tomorrow to learn and experience from her journey. Thank you. Play the video, please.
I was at work at Baragwanath Hospital, and I got a call from a man who introduced himself over the phone as Nelson Mandela. He said he wanted to see me and discuss certain issues with me. I was petrified. I was so shocked at receiving that call. I wondered what I had done. Then on the appointed day we met, and it transpired he wanted me to help raise funds for the then prison trial. That is how I met my husband.
Winnie came to visit us before she was married to Nelson. So she came as a very young woman, very much in love with Nelson, carrying photographs of him as a boxer in the ring, actually boxing.
herself under banning orders, Winnie did not hesitate to fight for her right to attend the trial. The children were refused permission to enter the courtroom. They would not see their father again for over 10 years.
I shall never lose hope, and my people shall never lose hope. In fact, we expect that the work will go on.
So there was demonstrations, and people were arrested and filled the jail. And Winnie was one of those people that were arrested. She was expectant with her first child at that time, and even in that state, she went to jail.
Alone in prison, it's very difficult to keep sane. Especially as political prisoners, we're always confined in their own cells and not mixed with other prisoners. I think the worst punishment for a human being is to isolate a person.
Winnie is really very amazing. There she is, banished to Brantford, God-forsaken place, a place where the Afrikaner think very little of an African. To them, an African is someone that is there, that has been put in this world to serve them and work for them. So she gets there, and she revolutionizes the whole place.
Don't drag me! I am coming! Don't drag me! Don't drag me! You may accompany me. I know what that means.
I am as certain as the sun rises from the east and sets in the west that that man is going to lead this country to its liberation.
Apartheid gave birth to me. I didn't plan to do the things I did. I reacted to the situation of the time. I was just part and parcel of this huge machinery that was fighting for the total liberation of my people, and I'm a product of that. I'm a product of apartheid.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How
sizwe sizwe
Lest we forget that with this freedom comes great responsibility. Lest we forget that with this freedom, there is so much to be done in Mama's name. As many of us have said, she is resting in power, Nabapant. She is multiplied. Can we take what she has done by example and allow that to be our future narrative? We're blessed to be gathered here namhlanje, as we've mentioned, 100 days before Dada's centenary, but also to celebrate the life of Umama Wetu, who became this global phenomenon feared by many just because she was reacting to her reality. Con Hill has been an important part of our narrative as Abantu baseMzansi Afrika, and we are grateful for this partnership. Speaking on behalf of Con In, we'd like to welcome on stage Mr. Ruben Pasha.
To the family of Winnie, the Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, the Minister, Jeff Khadebe, who's here with us, Mama Gracia Machel, the CEO of Nelson Mandela Foundation, colleagues from Nelson Mandela Foundation in Constitution Hill, esteemed guests, welcome officially to Constitution Hill. It's very funny, actually, that you are all gathered here in an old prison. Most of you wouldn't have willingly come here under those apartheid years, even before apartheid years, because this was a very feared prison. When you mention number 4, people would tremble. But today, this place has transformed itself into a monument of our Constitution, and it is because of people like Winnie Mandela that we have this place today. You are now sitting under the remnants of the awaiting trial block stairs behind you. This was the biggest part of the prison that incarcerated the 156 treason trialists that were arrested in 1956. And 2 years later, Winnie Mandela was arrested in the same prison here. This place has a long history. It was opened and built by Paul Kruger in 1897 as an all-fort prison to keep law and order in Johannesburg. But later, in 1902, they built number 4, which is behind me, that incarcerated a lot of men. And then this was people like your Robert Sobukwe's, Mahatma Gandhi's. There's a lot of them. The list is endless. Then the women were also incarcerated in the women's jail, which was built in 1909 to 1910. And it kept people like Winnie Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, Fatima Meah. The list is also endless. So this is a very, very important place. And I would like to acknowledge and thank Nelson Mandela Foundation for bringing this event here in this place, because the significance is it was a place where Mam Winnie was arrested. She was brought here in 1958 for the first time when she was pregnant. And she was held in solitary confinement. And it was around the same period when she was still married to Nelson Mandela, who was also in prison. So you can imagine a family without parents who are both in prison. Her second stay, it was in 1976, where she was brought here with a link with Soweto uprising, and she was kept in one of the isolation cells in the women's jail. We would like to, as we celebrate or commemorate the Freedom Month this year, and honor Winnie Mandela as one of those liberation heroines of the liberation struggle by giving her a monumental exhibition, a photographic exhibition that will stay here in her memory. So that our children, those who come after me, can come here and remember her and remember what she fought for. We honored her before in 2004 when the court was built and opened and the museums were built in the women's jail by naming one of the courtyards Winnie Mandela courtyards. So she was honored. And we are fortunate that she kept on working with Constitution Hill even after when the prison no longer functioned as a prison, but it was a museum and a home of the Constitutional Court. I remember she launched a book here. I remember she had a lot of events that she was doing here. And I can imagine how difficult it must have been to come back to a place that used to humiliate and torture you. But I know she was doing it for us, and then we'd like to continue on that by honoring her with an exhibition. I would like to also invite you after this event to go to the women's jail, see where she was incarcerated. We have put a book there where people can write messages for her, which we will hope to include in our upcoming exhibition. And do come back again to see this photographic exhibition of Mam Winnie. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker was a prisoner here. 3 generations of Palmer women were imprisoned on the same day in this very prison. Mama Cecily Palmer was here with her mother, not knowing that at the time she was pregnant with her own daughter. Having conversations with women like this, we are reminded that today cannot be a talk shop, and today has to be exemplary of us making sure that we live the legacy. Please put your hands together for Mama Cecily Palmer.
Good morning, everybody. All protocol observed. I'm sorry, I'm not ever, I can't be I've never managed to be politically correct. So please excuse me if I haven't greeted you properly. Just to say, I was in this trail together with Nomzamo in 1976. There was a group of us that were picked up from July 1976. I'll name those women. And then I want you to think about how many of them are still alive. Nomzamo, Winnie Mandela, Fatima Mir, Deborah Machoba, Jeannie Noel, Joyce Siroke, Sally Motlana, Lolo Tabani, Sibongile Kubeka, Oshari Mangena, Vesta Smith, who was my mother and me. All these women were locked up under the Internal Security Act because people like Jimmy Kruger were too afraid. They locked us up because they thought we were a danger to the state. I'd like to speak about my last meeting with Nomzamo. We met quite by accident in Macro. It was at a time when Utata was sick and my mother was sick at that same time. It was in 2013. We saw each other and we spoke. We spoke in depth, particularly from Nomzamo's side. She spoke with great sadness about what was happening today. She spoke about where did we go wrong. She said to me, why is it so difficult for people to walk a straight line? For the first time, I saw her looking vulnerable because of the sadness. The illness of her husband and the illness of a friend really and truly touched her very deeply. Her eyes welled up. I didn't hold her. I didn't hold her because I didn't want anybody else to see that fragility in her. Because the women I've called today, that I've just named, that were here, were all women who were leaders in their own right. Her concern had always been about people that were forgotten. Why have we forgotten women? I'd like to ask a question. How many of you know Pila Ndwandwe? How many of you know a young woman, Unati, can I have some water, please? That was kept naked for 10 days and then assassinated. How many of you know Rita Ntanga? Excuse me. June Mlangeni, Mangeleza, Mabart, Barbara Hogan, Cindy Bagley, Lydia Hompe, Esther Barso, Rika Hodgson. I can go on and on. And here I want to challenge the ANC. I want to ask you directly, why is it that you put weak women at the head of women's ministries? It's time you got serious about what you're doing. Let's peel off all the scabs we have and let's repair this country. It's our job to do it. We cannot, we've been hearing since last week, Monday, about Nomzamo's resilience and everything that she stood for. Can we take up the cudgels as a tribute to a woman that strived for freedom? Thank you.
gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. Sizophumelela, sizophindelela, sizophikelela. Sizophumelela, sizophindelela, sizophikelela. Angeke basiqede namhlanje. I know that I can make it. Though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so
Ladies and gentlemen, please can we give the Unity Choir another round of applause. This Thursday at 5:30 will be the official opening of Umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela's exhibition. It would be here at Cornhill, and this is organized by the African photographers who have come together from all over the continent to pay tribute and to give of their art and how they have depicted Umama over the years and the generations. We'd like to call on Mr. Trevor Manuel right now to speak on Umama.
Thank you very much, Ayanda. Good morning to all of you, especially to the members of the Madikizela and Mandela families. Mam Grasa, Deputy Chief Justice, now joined us. Ministers Khadebe and Glodlo, Uncle George, all of our friends and comrades who are here. I was pounced upon by Sildo. I was minding my own business, so forgive me. I think that the importance of this day, marking 100 days to the centenary of Madiba's birth, is important, but there's just one other date I'd like to bring into our memory bank. And that is that today marks the 25th anniversary since the assassination of Comrade Hani. You see, one of the reasons why today is important in the memory of Mam Winnie is also to remind ourselves of what has gone before. The author Milan Kundera says that the struggle against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. And we must always engage in that struggle so that those words that Madiba uttered at his inauguration, never, never, and never again, are not forgotten words associated with a single speech in May of 1994. It should shape the break with the oppressive past that we've heard about played out on this very site and what we must build for the future. And it's in taking that and the lessons from Mam Winnie's life that we begin to understand what that struggle is about. You see, that harrowing tale that she tells in 491 days of how she sought that inner strength and the journey that she went on. And I said to priests last week, Bishop, you sometimes warn us of hell, but you don't tell us what it's actually about. If you want to understand hell, those 491 days are the story of hell. But it's in passing through that Mam Winnie developed that inner core of strength that we so all admire, that made her somewhat unmanageable, but it gave her the strength because she understood then that the reliance is upon herself and that inner core of strength. And in looking back on her life and engaging in that struggle against forgetting, it is that we seek to take forward out of her life. Because she always had her ear to the ground. Hers was an ongoing struggle on behalf of others. It was a struggle for the downtrodden. It was a struggle for the poor. It was turning the worst adversity into a struggle. It was the tale of a banishment that she turned into acts of love and kindness by establishing a clinic and a soup kitchen for the people who were forgotten in that horrible place that didn't even have a name until the community named it Madikizela. It is that inner core of strength that each one of us must try and discover in ourselves and then join up and ask how we take the struggles forward. Comrade Tokyo Sekwale, in whose stead I stand here this morning, told an interesting story of how many people had given Mam Winnie money, but it was never for Mam Winnie. It just flowed through her hands like sand because it was always for others. That is how she lived. It was a life of unselfishness and a life in service. And in taking that forward and in remembering this day, and in asking about our own responsibilities into the future, we're reminded of the words written by the author Edmund Burke, who said, society is a partnership between those who have gone before, those who are alive, and those who are not yet born. And those of us who are alive take the lessons from the lives of those who've gone before. We live it out now so that we build a different future for our children. It's that kind of responsibility that we can never walk away from. It's that kind of responsibility that we are imbued with because of the life of Winnie Madikizela Mandela and how selflessly she gave and how she cajoled us into action. And in understanding that, you know, is one other part of her. Sometimes people say, Ungani, they say, don't speak badly because we must all be united. One of the things I learned from Mam Winnie is that unity is forged in struggle. If you don't wage struggle, you neither need unity nor will you find it. You must engage in struggle. And part of our responsibility is to struggle against those things that Mampama talked about that we observe as wrong so that we can right it, because we know we have responsibility not just to ourselves, but to those who are not yet born. That's the partnership that we seek to develop. That's the partnership whose lessons we draw out of the life of Mam Winnie. Lala Gutrolo, Kawela Matawe. Rest in peace, our mother. You have served us well, but you've provided us with the lessons to take forward. Aluta continua.
A great lesson you've left us with, Mr. Trevor Manuel. Let us be the society that we desire. Let us learn from our predecessors. Be the living example for those who are yet to come. I'd like to welcome to speak on behalf of the foundation, Naledi Chirwa.
Sanbanani, Ninjani, I greet you all in the name of a hero, of a storm, of a volcano, of a hero that lives in all of us, of our political conscience, of our fighter, Umamnomzamu Winifred Zanyiwe Madikizela Mandela. And I'm going to be short really today. I just want to remind us that, like she said last year, South Africa is a country in crisis. We are in crisis because black women still can't breathe. Black women still can't breathe. I'm here to remind you that black women in townships are still subjected to working in retail shops and earning 2,500 Rand per month. I'm here to remind you that domestic workers can't report their rape cases that have been happening for years because they are scared that they will lose their jobs. I'm here to remind you about Banyana Banyana. I'm here to remind you about Portia Modise, who has scored more international goals than any soccer player and yet has not received any recognition from this country. I'm here to remind you about Rose War, about the woman who fought at Rose University fighting against rape and yet got excluded for life. I'm here to remind you about Fees Must Fall activists who are in jail as we speak, some who are going in and out of court cases. I'm here to remind you about girls living in rural areas who don't have access to clinics, girls who don't have access to safe reproductive health. I'm here to remind you about us, the fact that we can't breathe. We can't breathe in corporate worlds. We can't breathe with the law. We can't breathe in our political spaces. We can't breathe in our homes. We can't breathe in taxi ranks. We can't breathe. And if we are serious about carrying the legacy and the baton of Mama Nomzamo, we will ensure that from today onwards, no HR department will function as long as women earn less than their male counterparts. We will ensure that sanitary towels are not a dream for some girls. We will ensure that safe abortions are accessible to us and that black girls don't have to wait on waiting lists for 3 months until they can't have their safe abortions. We will ensure that queer women don't have to pay with their lives to exist. We will ensure that lesbian women don't have to die for them to exist. We will ensure that there's a sex court for sex crimes, for women who've been raped. We are tired of rape crimes being treated the same as cell phone thuggery and thieves. It must come to an end. That is the only way we will celebrate Mama Nomzamo. The land is still not in our hands. We still don't have economic freedom. We still can't afford taxis. There's many girls who would have loved to be here, but abana mali taxi. So we also have to start moving from these spaces back into our townships and rural areas. Because Mama Nomzamo is alive. She's alive and she's living. She's the very woman who stripped naked to cease fire at Wits University. She's alive. And we have to start seeing her. Because there has not been any justice for her or any woman in this country who has wanted to speak out and be bold. Thank you so much for coming. But I truly hope that honoring Mama Nomzamo will go beyond ceremonies and one night and one day events. I hope that we'll start celebrating her in our homes and ensuring that patriarchy suffocates until it dies. And capitalism suffocates until it dies. And rape suffocates until it dies. Because black women can't breathe. Thank you.
Now, lady, with women like you, we will breathe. And we will remind the world that we are enough. And we will remind the world that we do not have to beg to just be. And we will remind the world that we are worthy, we are powerful. And Mama indeed has not died, she has multiplied. And she is in every single one of us. And we have a greater responsibility to be the love, the freedom, the power that we want to be. From one powerful woman to another, ladies and gentlemen, representing the Ministry of Public Service Administration, please can you allow us to welcome Minister Ayanda Dlodlo onto stage.
That is going to be a very hard act to follow. That was one fiery young lady. Magubenjalo, Magubenjalo, Kude kube ngunaphakade, kude kube ngunaphakade. I'm not very good at following protocol. I am politically trained, but I am not very good at following protocol. But I will start by recognizing usapho lwakwaMandela as represented by my young sister Undileka and Umam Grasa, the foundation as represented by Usillo, who seems to think I'm part of the foundation's furniture, my colleague who calls me college, Jeff Khadebe, many friends and families of this beautiful nation of ours. I had not prepared anything for this. I had thought I'd speak off the cuff, but I was going through an article that I had written for the New York Times, and I thought, what a wonderful opportunity for me to share that, because it speaks to the essence of the woman that we're remembering today. And I will just read how some in our world have lost an opportunity to know this phenomenal warrior of the South African struggle, now that death has robbed them of the opportunity to know the mother of the nation. What death has also done through, though, is deliver this flower of our revolution to our lounges, bedrooms, and all spaces where you watch news as they unfold. Death has given you the opportunity to interact with the mother of our nation through prose, reports, tweets, and other social media posts, opinion pieces, eulogies, dinner table chats, and random discussions with people who share in our grief and those who actually don't. I had the pleasure of sitting with Mama when the documentary of her life was produced and premiered in Johannesburg last year. Anyone who wants to know Winnie Madikizela Mandela should watch this documentary. You will understand the human fallibility, her anxiety, her feelings of betrayal, her love for the people, her commitment to the liberation of our country, her zeal in keeping the names of our leaders in exile and in prison on the lips of every child in our country. That is the Winnie with the unflinching spirit of no surrender. In her, Madinoche lived. Through her work, Nandi emerged. She carried the baton of Helen Joseph, Rahima Musa. She exuded the resilience and supportive nature of Nogutela Lutuli, the love of Coretta Scott King, the great baby sister to Mama, my other mom, Grasa Machel, a liberation fighter in her own right. She was the ultimate soldier who feared nothing and stared death right back in the face. Like the great Betty Shabazz, the great American educator and activist who happened to be married to Malcolm X, she never allowed her own light to be diminished by the powerful men she was married to. When men who would be intimidated by the greatness that they were standing next to Mama Winnie and Betty Shabazz blossomed and blazed their own paths, they found their own generational missions and with unapologetic vigor fulfilled it. She lived a life of platinum grade in service to the people in a bronze world of pain and imperfection. We remember her, as we remember her, we must remember her as Mama Winnie, the brave, the one who stared death in the face and feared nothing. She was the mother hen who protected her children in Brantford, Mamelodi, Soweto, Guguletu, Kwamashu, and every corner of our beautiful home of warriors. She was as vulnerable and feminine as she was brave and masculine. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice in our land, respect those who worked to build and develop our country. The Constitution of our land enjoins us all to honor her and respect her for what she did for us and humanity at large. We will miss your enchanting smile, your loving self, and all that you did to liberate us. Hamba kahle Mkhonto, hamba kahle Sotsha lika Luthuli, hamba kahle flower of the revolution, hamba kahle mother of our nation. Ngiyabonga.
From the Ministry of Public Service Administration to the Ministry of Energy, please put your hands together and welcome on stage Minister Jeff Radebe.
Thank you, Nati. Firstly, let me acknowledge the foundation, as well as Mam Grasa, Ndilega, and all the Mandela family and Madikizela who are present here this morning. And also to acknowledge Mam Grasa and the Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, my colleague, Ayanda Dlodlo, and my former colleague, Trevor Manuel, and all mourners who are present here this morning. I'm honored to address you this morning as a tribute to Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. The late Mama Winnie, my family, and I shared a very special relationship. Above these personal relations, Mama Winnie was my political inspiration, a beacon of hope, and a mentor. There are occasions where my family and I have sought her guidance and wisdom to traverse many of the challenges of our lives. I'm also honored that I've been invited by an institution which preserves not only the legacy of our iconic leader, but also his values. Although the foundation was established to preserve the legacy of one man, Nelson Mandela, it has become to consider all those who shared his values, which have now been accepted by many the world over. Let me also thank our President, President Cyril Ramaphosa, for declaring a 10-day national period of mourning. The African National Congress has also released a schedule of events as part of this 10-day mourning period. We still have a few days to go, but already through the length and breadth of our country, there has been a very impressive show of appreciation of the role that Mama Winnie has played in the struggle for the liberation of all of South Africa's people. Throughout the week, there have been organized tributes to the mother of the nation and outpouring of condolences to the Mandela and the Madikizela families. On Friday, various musicians paid tribute to Mama Winnie in a very moving concert in Baseline in Joburg. Yesterday, there was a Methodist Church dedication in honor of Mrs. Mandela, Madikizela Mandela, in Soweto in Midlands. It is a tribute that celebrates one of the best human relation stories of that century. There is in South Africa an overwhelming sense that today we are reuniting the two icons who were larger than life in heavenly matrimony. It is like we are saying, as there were powerful forces in the world, in this temporary world, they are now being joined to be equally powerful forces in the world yonder. As Mandela himself once quipped, we can be assured that the ANC branch in heaven is growing and its leadership is being strengthened by the arrival of Mama Winnie. I'm saying this deliberately to lay a basis for my congratulations to the foundation for having safeguarded the legacy of our icon, Nelson Mandela, in many trying times. What the foundation has done with its limited resources is to champion the unity that was forged by President Nelson Mandela. Many tributes also have observed that Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela spoke truth to power. She never wavered to state her mind in correcting the wrongs and reprimanding the wayward. I have also found the Nelson Mandela Foundation to have taken this route by not flinching in its responsibility to speak truth to power. That truth might sometimes be uncomfortable to some, but the foundation should not be cowered by the few to whom this truth is uncomfortable. Weak leadership survives on short-term populism. I found our icon, Nelson Mandela, Mama Winnie, and the foundation, though popular in their own right, avoiding populism as a tool of mobilization. I am not privy to Mama Winnie's family plans about preserving her legacy. I can only hope that her legacy so rich cannot be left unpreserved, not so much for its historic reality, but also for its ability to shine like a lighthouse that will guide future generations. For Mama Winnie's legacy to be that lighthouse, we need to be tireless in our efforts to set records straight. Having excelled in the legacy preservation of the late icon Mandela, the foundation has laid a template from which any future considerations of the preservation of Mama Winnie's legacy can be learned. This should not be done because of the relationship between Nelson Mandela and Mama Winnie, but because of the universal appeal of the Mandela Foundation. Seldom do nations hold their heroes and heroines dear as the foundation has done. It is not always that a South African institution can be categorized as international best practice. We have always thought what is international best practice is found outside our African continent, usually in Euro-American examples. I'm of the view that the Nelson Mandela Foundation is that international best practice entity for legacy preservation. Mama Winnie's passing away is being mourned by political parties across the ideological divide. Leaders of South African political parties have done this by physically visiting a Mandela home in Orlando West, Soweto. Others have sent messages of condolences. That maturity to look beyond the political divides opens a whole new hope for our country, which had a very divided past and sometimes robust political contestations. However, it will reduce Mama Winnie's death as a contribution to national unity if it is expressed more in inter-party and less inside her movement that she lived and died for. The internal discords in the ANC are healthy sometimes, but once they compromise the unity that is needed, particularly at this juncture in our history, gives an advantage to opposition parties which have set aside their own differences with the ANC. In conclusion, I wish to thank the Nelson Mandela Foundation for having organized this event. If there's an organization that needed to pay a tribute, it was this organization that bears the name of Nelson Mandela. I thank you. I would like to take this opportunity at this juncture to introduce our Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic, Raymond Zondo, a man who is a formidable lawyer. Some call him a conservative judge, but he is a fair judge, a fearless, independent judge who got into the bench in 1997 in the Labor Court and later became the Judge President of the Labor Court and later was admitted as a judge of the Gauteng High Court. When I was a Minister of Justice, it was during that time that the Judicial Service Commission appointed him and recommended him to be a judge of the Constitutional Court. And as we know, recently he was appointed and elected to be the Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic. And we know his task at hand at the moment. You can be rest assured that he is a very fair man of the law. With those words, I'd like to call upon Deputy Chief Justice Zondo.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not as tall as Minister Jeff Hadebe, so I will have to lower this. Thank you, Program Director, and thank you to Minister Jeff Hadebe for those very pleasing words with which you have introduced me. I did notice that when you acknowledged me, you said Chief Justice, but when you introduced me, you did say Deputy Chief Justice. Let me begin by acknowledging the Mandela family and the Madikizela family. Let me also acknowledge the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Let me acknowledge the ministers that I see who are present here and former ministers that are here. Let me acknowledge many women who are here with us and all compatriots and ladies and gentlemen. It is a special honor and privilege to me to have been invited to join you on this very special occasion and to make a few remarks to pay tribute to someone as special to the majority of this country as Mam Winnie Madikizela Mandela. It was with shock and disbelief that I learned last Monday that the mother of the nation was no more. Although I was aware that she was not well, I thought that having attended an Easter, a Good Friday church service for a number of hours, she was not somebody who could leave us so quickly. I join all compatriots, the peoples of Africa and the world, in sending condolences to her daughters, Zinzi and Zenani, to the entire Mandela family, to the Madikizela family, and indeed to all the people of South Africa, because today we are gathered here to pay tribute to somebody who was very special to all of us as South Africans. She was called the mother of the nation, and deservedly so. Mam Winnie's loss is not just a loss to the families of Mandela and Madikizela. It is a loss to all of us. We as a nation have lost a fearless freedom fighter, a brave leader, and yet a loving parent, a loving mother, and a loving grandmother. Indeed, we have lost a caring community leader. For many years, when many leaders were in prison or exile, Mam Winnie Madikizela Mandela was one of those who gave us in the country a beacon of hope. She was one of those who made sure that the struggle continued. She made sure, together with many others, that we remembered that there was racism and apartheid that needed to be defeated. Her fearlessness inspired many of us as young people in schools and universities, because she was able to face the police in the eyes with all the might that they had and deal with them in a way that sent the message that she was saying to them, you do not scare me. You do not intimidate me, because I stand for justice. You stand for injustice. I stand for what is right. You stand for evil, and evil will never prevail over what is right. We gather this morning to pay tribute to a selfless woman, to a selfless leader who was always rooted in her people, who was always among her people. Whenever there were challenges in communities, whenever there were disasters in communities, whenever different communities waged their struggle, she was there with them. She was always one of the first ones to be with the communities, to help them, and to show them that they are not alone. There was no place that she did not go to in order to deal with community issues. She went to informal settlements, she went to squatter camps, and throughout that period, she was with the people, and she made sure that they remained hopeful that in the end, the evil of apartheid would be defeated. We all know the suffering that she was put through by the apartheid government. She was banned, she was banished, she was incarcerated, she was humiliated, but throughout that period, she stood firm and in effect told the apartheid government that you shall not break me. You shall not break me, because apartheid will be defeated. Even when, during the states of emergency of the 1980s, it seemed very dark and a lot of activists were in detention, she was quite clear that the struggle will have to go on because apartheid would be defeated. She raised her children without her husband. And throughout that period, she never complained because she appreciated the sacrifices that had to be made in order to advance our struggle for freedom. Mam Winnie spoke her mind. It did not matter who you were. If she did not agree with you, she would say so. And on an occasion such as this, we need to reflect whether, in honor of Mam Winnie, we are going to end up with words and words and words only, or whether each and every one of us is going to deeply reflect on what it is that we need to do differently from now on in honor of Mam Winnie, Madikizela Mandela, together with many others who have passed on, who sacrificed a lot for our country. She will be reporting to many stalwarts of our struggle about what is going on in this country. And while we have made advances in many respects, she will not have a very good report to give about what we are doing. She will not have a very good report to give because we men are raping children, because we men are raping our grandmothers, because we men do not respect the rights of children. She will not give a very good report about us, because she will tell them that the level of corruption in this country has reached proportions that no one could ever have imagined before. And she will say, this is not the kind of country that we sacrificed for. She is going to report on what we are doing about corruption. And we need to reflect on whether what we are doing about corruption is effective. And if it is effective, why is corruption rising every day? What do we need to do? A lot needs to change in our mindset. We need to draw from the fearlessness that Mam Winnie had, that Mam Winnie taught us, and use that in order to change the situation about corruption in our country. Corruption in our country is deepening because we are fearful. If I'm a member of parliament and I must hold the executive accountable, I am scared because I still want to rise in the party. I still want to be deputy minister. I still want to be a minister. And I'm not going to play my oversight role, because in that way, I'm going to limit my career prospects. If I am a minister, I'm going to turn a blind eye because I'm going to lose this position. We need to take the lesson of fearlessness that Mam Winnie left us and say to ourselves, what is it that I am going to do from now on that will demonstrate fearlessness in order to make my own contribution to changing this society to be the society that Mam Winnie and many others who have passed on and those who are still with us fought for. Corruption remains a serious cancer in our society. And unless we demonstrate fearlessness in relation to dealing with it, many other stalwarts who are still among us will, when they pass on, report or give bad reports about us. Many years ago, after we achieved our democracy, and some people said we would have corruption in this country and mentioned other countries in Africa and said we would be like them, I said it would not happen, not in this country. But I can't say that anymore. But we need to go beyond speaking. We need to act. Do we have the courage, if I am a member of parliament, to say, I would rather face consequences with my party rather than not do my job and not perform my constitutional duties of oversight and hold the executive accountable? Are we prepared to say, in honor of Mam Winnie, in honor of many others who have gone before her, who have sacrificed so much for us to enjoy the freedom that we enjoy. Are we prepared to say, let me suffer if I suffer, but I am standing up in order to make sure that I make my own contribution to the realization of the society that Mam Winnie stood for, of the society that Mam Winnie fought for. Unless and until we are prepared to make those sacrifices, we are not going to make much headway in changing this society into the kind of society that our Constitution envisages, into the kind of society that Mam Winnie fought for. And we must decide whether, after we have laid her to rest, there is nothing we are going to do differently. We are just going to go back to our jobs and do as we have always done. And of course, if we do that, the result will be the same. Corruption and other ills of our society will just continue. I think that the judiciary has been playing its role, and I have no doubt in my mind that it will continue to play its role. And all of us must play our role, because no single arm of the state can succeed in ridding our country of corruption unless we all come together and play our role. This is another way of saying, what shall we do? And within the time available, if we all recommit ourselves to dealing with issues of corruption, dealing with issues of gender, then, and we give ourselves 120% to that, then we will go somewhere. We must aim for a time when Mam Winnie and all our stalwarts who have passed on can in due course look back in our country and smile because of the progress we will have made in changing our country to be the kind of country that they fought for, to be the kind of country that they suffered for, to be the kind of country that we all dream of, a country of equality, a country of non-racism, a country of non-sexism, and a country that upholds human rights, a country that upholds the rule of law, a country that upholds the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary will continue to honor all our stalwarts, and it will honor Mam Winnie by making sure that it carries out its constitutional duty to adjudicate cases without fear, without favor, and without prejudice. We ask all of you to join us in doing that. In conclusion, I say to the Madikizela and Mandela families, thank you for giving us Mam Winnie. She was wonderful to this country. I don't know if we have honored her properly, but she has done a lot for us. To be where we are, to be in the positions in which we are, she, together with many others, suffered and sacrificed quite a lot. It is therefore proper that from this day we recommit ourselves to doing whatever is necessary to change the situation in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice Zondo. Psychologists always say that when it comes to childbearing and being a parent, you must always be cognizant of the time you allocate to each of your children, especially to the older ones who have had to accept sharing you with the younger ones, because to a child, you are their favorite person in the world. To usapho lakwa Mandela nesizukulu, we asked of you something that we would never want to be asked of us, for you to share graciously abazali benu, notamkhulu wenu, nomakhulu wenu. We ask this in the greater name of the freedom of South Africa, and you did so generously and so graciously. Umama would often speak of her pain and say, every time abantwana bakhe would come back from esikolweni, the apartheid government made sure that they would arrest her the day before so that they would rob her of the privilege of welcoming home abantwana bakhe from school. We asked and you gave to us Sapho lakwa Mandela, nesizukulu sakwa Mandela. Namhlanje, we ask you to let umama go. Speaking on behalf of the Mandela family, nosapho, nesizukulu sakwa Mandela, Dileka Mandela.
It is really hard for me to be standing in front of you today. We called her Big Mommy. We still gutted. It's still very sore. Mommy took us by surprise. It is quite significant that this memorial is held here today because this is a place that Big Mommy spent time in solitary confinement. This is the same place she received the news of my father's accident. As a family, I would like to say we still need you quite a lot. We need your support. I'm standing in front of you today because of the support that you've given us. My cousins and aunts are gutted as I am, but I felt it necessary to honor this occasion because of the significance of the 100 days and celebrating Big Mommy's life with that of Granddad. To the general public, we say thank you so much. And to Silo, I say that, I have to leave after here because we are busy with Mom's preparation. And because we know in life, she got a raw deal. And we want her to be buried in dignity. So please excuse me. Thank you.
All protocol observed. It feels a bit unfair to have to talk today. I believe many of you will understand why it is so difficult for Ndileka to speak. It is equally difficult to me as well. But we thought, anyway, we have to be here to represent the family. And I'm not going to be talking about Mama, my big sister, today. I'm still processing pain. I prefer to be quiet, to feel it, to have every minute to try to understand the significance of the pain I'm going through. So it is too early, really too early, for us to be able to process the pain we are going through. But let me say something. As a nation, we tend to wake up to realize who are the people who have made us as a nation. People who sacrifice so much for us. We tend only to wake up and to recognize them when they leave. Can you imagine how wonderful it would have been for Mama to sit amongst us, to listen to all those tributes which have been outpouring ever since the moment her transition has been announced? Don't you think it would have been only fair that you would hear and listen from all segments of our society who united, and they forgot all the small differences, but they came together simply as her children and to call her, Mama, we love you. Don't you think it would have been so wonderful? Don't you think it would have been really great for her to have all the untruths which were allowed to live with us about her life to be cleared while she's still amongst us? Don't you think it would have been simply good that Mama would hear from all races, all political parties, all children, young people, old people, just to say how unique she is in our history and how unique she'll continue to be. Now, we are telling all those things to ourselves, because I do not know whether Mama is absorbing all this. I'm hoping she does. I'm simply hoping, because I do not know what happened when someone transit. But I'm hoping she's absorbing this. But I hope also that we'll be able to recognize and honor those who are still amongst us, some of whom are sitting here in front of us while they're still alive. I want also to say you know, it is not going to happen to have a Winnie Mandela so soon, because she multiplied herself in thousands, if not even in millions. Because of that, I want to challenge us, each one of us. If Mama was giving soup to people in Soweto, who is going to stand tomorrow and do it? If Mama was comforting young people wherever they needed her, she would have her door open to them. Who is going to stand and do that as from now on? If Mama was able to comfort, fees must fall, just for the right to a free education. And yes, a young lady told us that there are still young people who are in prison because of this. Who is going to take them out and say, no matter what are the methods they have used, they are standing for a right which the Constitution recognized to every young person in this nation? Who is going to do all this? In Langa, in townships, everywhere in the country. If we still have almost 50% of our people who are living in abject poverty, what is it which you and I are going to do to push back poverty? Personally, because many times we tend to think it's government which has to do it. Any one of us can do something about it. You know, I wasn't in a position to listen to pledges which were made 5 years ago when Mandela passed on. Only much later, I took the courage to watch some of the TV programs which were taken that time. I'm sorry, but I have to say this. 5 years later, after those pledges, South Africa is worse than Madiba left. But we all pledged. Tata, we are going to do this. Tata, we are going to honor you. Tata, we did exactly the same thing we are doing now. I want to ask each one of you, come Monday, after the funeral, what are you personally are going to do more, to do better, to do differently, but intentionally, as more than a pledge, but action to honor Mama. I hope, yes, in the new dawn we talk about recommitting ourselves, as Deputy Chief Justice was saying, it is not going to end with these 2 weeks of mourning. Now, I also want to say something which has made my pain even heavier. Zenani and Zinzi grew up under Mama's wings. Yes, with all what we know, while she was at home, she was in prison, wherever she was. But Mama was for them there. These children have had very little of upbringing from their father. Zeni and Zinzi were toddlers when Madiba went to prison. And when he came back, they were young women, married, with children. And actually, some of the children had given Madiba and Mama great-grandchildren. So for Zeni and Zinzi, Mama is the big, big, big tree they leaned on for their life, the whole of their life. The grandchildren equally, all her grandchildren and great-children, they flocked to Soweto because Mama was there. They grew up effectively with some spaces in their personality which could not consolidate enough because they didn't have an ordinary family. Their family was not ordinary one. I want to ask you, come Monday next week, embrace Zeni and Zinzi. Embrace the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, because there's no one. All of us as Mandelas or Madikizelas, there's no one who will be able to fill the space in their life. And we know that these children, they sacrificed as much as their parents, actually, and perhaps more than their parents, because their parents made a choice. But these children, they never made a choice. They confronted a situation they have to live with and to deal with many times with so much of misunderstanding. I want to ask this nation to be embracing and loving to these children. Please don't be so harsh as many times you have been to judge them. On the contrary, they deserve more than anyone our love, our recognition, and actually our tribute to them as children of this nation. I want also to say something about our family in general, and perhaps the families of all those who gave their lives for the struggle. We tend to recognize and praise our heroes. And really, it is time also to recognize, as I said, those children, those grandchildren, because there's nothing, absolutely nothing, which can replace the love, the caring, the guidance of a parent and all the children who miss that opportunity when we say, Mama, you gave everything to us. Perhaps we need to learn to give everything back to their children as well. We as a family, we have been blessed to have Madiba as the head of our family. We have been blessed to have Mama as the matriarch of our family. Now, what is left of us? I just want you to understand why we are so shaken. Why we still are confused. And because we don't have the courage of our parents, we fear the future. We are not who they are, although we are their product. So I want to ask some of you who have been close, either to the children, to the grandchildren, or the great-grandchildren. It is from Monday, after the funeral, when that house will be empty and the children have to wake up, look around, and begin the journey of learning, literally learning to live without the physical presence of Mama. That's when you are needed the most. And that is not for a week, it's not for a month. It will be a long journey. Thank you, South Africa. Thank you, the world. God bless you. But more importantly, I would like to stand in 1 year's time and hear many of us reporting. Chief Justice, it's not a reporting to those who have gone. It's a report to the children of this country, what you have done differently and better to honor. In 1 year's time, what you have done for the women of this country, what you have done for the young people of this country, what you have done to make our country so safe, so loving, in which everyone can have an opportunity. If you do that, then all these 2 weeks of a celebration will make sense. If not, I'm sorry. This is what we are talking about here, more than talking. In 1 year's time, I don't want to give you that more. 1 year's time, each one of us has to report one single thing you have done to say, I honor Winnie Mandela. Thank you.
Mom Gracia, I don't think 365 days is too much to ask for. We've been given a year to come back and say, what have we done personally, each and every one of us? I say 365 is not long because it is less than the 491 days that Mama spent incarcerated. A year, a month, and 6 days. It is our responsibilities as South Africans to ensure that we lead by example and we retire from these PR talk shops that we have become so synonymous with. Thank you for your leadership, Ma. Thank you for your honesty. And thank you for expecting nothing less than our best, because we need to live by example, as you do, as Mama has, as Utata has, every single day of our lives. We've almost come to the end of the program, ladies and gentlemen. We will end it with a thanks from our CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mr. Silo Hatang, followed by the Soweto Gospel Choir, who would like you to stand with us, so we can sing our national anthem. That will be followed by an incredible tribute by a phenomenal musician, the one, the only, Thandi Swamazwai, which will be followed by the Princess of Africa herself, Umam Yvonne Chakachak. On behalf of the foundation, on behalf of the family, usapho nesizukulu sakwaMandela, sibulela ngobukho benu namhlanje.
Thank you very much, Unati. Good afternoon. As Deputy Minister Andries Nel once reminded us that all protocol observed is in the past, but that today we say, consider yourselves protocoled while I observe you. And while observing you, I observed the pain that has come before me. But I also say that the person we are celebrating today was also full of life, was also full of humor too. I remember when one of the last times I spent time with her was on the bedside of someone that we hold really dear, Madikizela. And we shared a few jokes, even though they were about pain. And today we call on Madikizela to say, a year on, we were standing there with him having passed. Today, we are here to celebrate Mam Winnie's legacy. The passing of Mam Winnie Madikizela Mandela was a devastating blow for the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Our thoughts are with her daughters, Zenani and Zinzi, especially, and with all of her family, friends, and comrades. The palpable pain that we saw earlier on, both from Meg Grasa Machel and from Ausen Dilega, it will always haunt us to say we have lost greatness. But it will also remind us that we will cheer and say we lived with greatness. Mam Winnie was more than just a friend of the foundation. She was an advisor, a friend, and a moral conscience. We worked with her on a number of projects over the last decade, including the book 491 Days, which drew on the archive of her time as a prisoner. Over the years, we have valued her support of our work. To our staff, the staff members of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, who was devastated by her passing, condolences to you too. Thank you for your hard work despite your own pain. Mam Winnie represents a generation of South African leadership and black women who were exposed to the full brutality of the apartheid regime. She endured continuous harassment at the hands of the apartheid security police, and unlike Nelson Mandela, was subjected to torture while in prison. She is of the tortured generation who lost their innocence at the hands of that brutal system. While the pain that she endured during these years could not be forgotten, she did not allow it to break her spirit, as the Deputy Chief Justice indicated earlier on. It also didn't break her humanity. Stories of Mam Winnie have overflowed since her passing. Those who have tried to bring up her controversies and tried to develop a narrative of hate, violence, and anger have been quickly dispelled, and her story has been contextualized over and over. It is heartwarming that South Africans, in particular black women, are owning narratives of our country demanding that we do better. Moreover, we heard from those across South Africa, particularly the most vulnerable, who came forward with stories of warmth and love that were unheard of before. It was like Mam Winnie to continue her work outside of the spotlight, helping the most vulnerable with tenacity. Many South Africans Remember her as a lioness, and remember her defiance and fighting spirit. Across social media, there's a flurry of stories and videos and video clips where Mam Winnie stands headstrong towards apartheid police and protest and protects her people unafraid. Anand Singh brought those kind of images earlier on, and we thank you for that. The images we often remember and share are those of her dressed in army regalia, with her fist raised above her head, her defiance emblematic of the current mood within the country. However, I remember Mam Winnie not only for this raised fist, but also for the caring arm she wrapped against the most vulnerable. I remember her being completely distraught when the University of Johannesburg student, Palesa Madiba, went missing. I don't know how many of us remember Palesa. Unlike those who offer from afar, she went to the Madiba house and regularly called me for updates, in the hope that Palesa would receive the justice she deserved. She dedicated hours and hours to Palesa without looking for accolades or the limelight, but because she was dedicated to those who were suffering. I called her the day when Palesa's remains were found. She was heartbroken. That's the image that I also would like you to have. Raised fist, but embracing, warm Mam Winnie. When we think of Mam Winnie and Madiba, we remember the iconic image of 1990. Madiba and Mam Winnie with their hands in the air celebrating their victory. A victory that Mam Winnie fought and suffered for. I think we must also pause here to remember that if it was not for Mam Winnie's tireless campaigning, Madiba maybe would have been forgotten. As a person who has spent countless hours in Madiba's archives, my thoughts hardly go to the moment in 1990. Instead, I think of the haunting and often beautiful letters between them written whilst imprisoned. Those letters, they had to speak to 6 months of emotion and pain. They were only allowed to send letters once every 6 months of 500 words. The young wife, the imprisoned husband, a man distraught but in love, a young mother with a life she would never have expected, a life she was tossed into by the husband she chose. The movement, the ANC, she became a member of, and the people she identified as her own. That's why today we can proudly declare we are Winnie, and Winnie is us. The trauma of what that imprisonment did to a proud revolutionary is encapsulated by Madiba's words in a letter that he wrote in 1970 when he wrote to Mam Winnie, and I quote, "I feel as if I have been soaked in gall. Every part of me, my flesh, bloodstream, bone, and soul, so bitter. I am to be completely powerless to help you in the rough and fierce ordeals you are going through," close quote. When we think of the lioness in her early 20s who lost her husband to an oppressive government, we never think of the trauma that she suffered or the yoke of leadership that was thrust upon her during that time. I quote from her letter that she wrote to him in 1970 when she said, "We were hardly a year together. When history deprived me of you, I was forced to mature on my own, for your formidable shadow, which eclipsed me, left me naked and exposed to the bitter world of a young political widow. I knew this was a crown of thorns for me, but I also knew, I said, I do for better or worse. In marrying you, I was marrying the struggle of my people. Yes, the thorns sometimes pricked so hard that the blood from the wounds covered up my eyes, and the excruciating pains blinded me for a while. Although I staggered across the path of freedom with pain, I staggered forward and never doubted my goal, even when the crown was nailed by my people at times. This was only history. I would not have been worthy of their great love without such, close quote. If that does not demonstrate love, nothing can. If that does not demonstrate dedication to struggle, nothing can. Sam Fenter, my colleague, is working on a collection of these letters, which we will release sometime in May, and you will receive that invitation soon. I hope that as we remember Mam Winnie, we remember her for her entire being, not just the revolutionary, but the lover, the mother, the grandmother, the politician, and the pragmatist, the one who struck fear into the heart of the apartheid machine, but who was also loved by so many South Africans. May I also add, by many on the African continent and by many globally. But I also remember that she was human, like you and I. I have no doubt that history will be kind to Mam Winnie, and history will remember her along with Mam Sisulu, Me Charlotte Mateke, Me Miriam Makeba, Ntate Steve Biko, Nelson Mandela, Ntate Chris Hani, and many other such giants of liberation. But for now, I remember her for her kind, loving, and wonderful person that she was to me. And I will always treasure the arms that she enveloped me with. Her by my side, I knew the impossible was possible, and that freedom and justice were always worth fighting for. I remember her as the one who embraced Palesa, the one who would embrace many Palesas before this Palesa and afterwards. In her honor, we must declare that as a nation, we will fight all social evils, that no child should go missing, no woman should be raped, nor any child should ever go hungry. In her honor, we must make sure that we respond to Bishop Mpumlwana's call that we become active citizens in honor of an ancestor of active citizenship. I think it is proper of all of us that as we observe this moment, we say, Madiba said in 2008, it is in our hands now that we take on that medal and say, we will make everything possible to make South Africa better for all who live in it. Let me thank the staff of the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Constitution Hill, Unity School Choir, PepsiCo, Constitution Hill, as I said, Soweto Gospel Choir, and Voter Kellerman, Tandiswa Mazwai, who is still to come, and of course, someone that I just pick up the phone whenever I can, just say, can you come and do something for us? And she always responds, Me Yvonne Chaka Chaka. And to all of you, I say we honor all of you, but that as we walk out of here, we must make sure that we make Mam Winnie proud from the other side. I'm going to ask all of us to please stand up as we sing the national anthem and invite Soweto Gospel Choir to the stage. I thank you very much.
Hey? I can hear you, yes.